We interviewed Michael Isikoff of Yahoo News about his story purporting to say that Russia initiated the Seth Rich conspiracy theory, but it was actually debunked by the Washington Post, as we showed him in that interview last week. The Post pointed out that 6 tweets claiming Rich was the leaker of the DNC emails and was killed for it were actually posted within 3 hours of Rich's death, not 3 days later, on a bizarre website that Isikoff links to Russian intelligence. Isikoff admitted that he never saw a supposed Russian intelligence document that was dated the same day that this website, whatdoesitmean.com, published its story. He merely quoted the former prosecutor of the Rich case, who said that she saw it. So one must be especially skeptical of intelligence agencies whose job description includes arts of deception, and not just of foreign adversaries, but also of the American people, as the Church Committee and other investigations in Congress in the mid-1970s showed us. Even Isikoff later in that story last week chose to use a qualifier, the qualifier purported to describe what he says the prosecutor was telling him, as he had not seen the actual intelligence document himself and was basically covering his derriere. My contention is that after 30 years in this business, in journalism, and it doesn't really matter who the source is if you've got authentic documents. And that's why the Wall Street Journal, for example, and other media have replicated WikiLeaks' anonymous drop boxes. Could be that Russians have even given things to the Wall Street Journal. If it's true, you publish it. When you have documents and they're authenticated, it doesn't matter what the motive or the source is. That matters when you have oral statements, such as the one that Isikoff got from that prosecutor. Now, on Tuesday, Isikoff published a new podcast in his series on the Seth Rich case. In that one, he zeroes in on Ed Butowsky, who joins us now from Dallas. Ed, welcome to CN Live.
Well, thank you for having me, and I just learned some things I didn't know, so thank you for your opening.
So thank you. Ed is a money manager. He's originally from New York, Westchester County. He's become embroiled in the Seth Rich controversy. And it started when a friend of his, whom he met at Fox News, Ellen Ratner, told him that she'd been to London to see Julian Assange at the Ecuadorian embassy the Saturday before the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Ed, can you pick up the story from there?
Yeah, Ellen Ratner and I became good friends. I mean, it wasn't just I met her in the green rooms. We developed a very long relationship. Matter of fact, we even spent Thanksgiving together in New York, our families. And the reason I'm saying that is that Isikoff, I've learned, is trying to make it sound like I barely knew Ellen. Ellen and I would communicate maybe every other week. We couldn't be any more different, and that's what I love about this lady, is that she is as left as could be, and I guess I'm a righty now, although I never thought I was, but we're very good friends, up until very recently, by the way, which I'll get to. So Ellen and I developed a very long relationship. I was helping her develop a revenue stream for her company called Talk Media News. Wasn't working there, didn't get paid, just doing it as a friend. Attended many events at the White House, Correspondents' Dinner, some congressional dinners. The point is that I had a long relationship with her. When she came back from seeing Julian Assange, I did not know she had visited with this man. And her comment was this: Ed, there are 3 things I learned on my trip. And I said, well, where were you? She said, well, I went to the dedication of a building for Michael, who was her brother. Michael Ratner, a very well-known attorney, represented, by the way, Julian Assange, Snowden, Chelsea Manning, and others. And she said, my brother represented Julian. I've been friends with Julian for 20 years. On the way back from the dedication of a building, stopped and met with him. He told me 3 things, Ed. 1, the password to Podesta's email was password. The password to the DNC server was change, and that the emails came from a young guy named Seth Rich. And he wanted me, she's saying that Julian wanted her to tell Joel and Mary Rich, the parents of Seth Rich, that the emails that he got came from them, because he wanted to make sure that they knew, because he also knew that the Washington police was not investigating this and wanted them to know, so maybe they could find a way to find out who murdered their son. She's told me flat out, I can't do this. I think I'm going against something for my brother. And not only that, I don't want to get involved with it. And she asked me to do it. We had that kind of relationship, almost like I was like a little brother to her. So, Joe, what I said at that point was, I don't want to get involved with this. I don't know this guy. I don't want to be involved. But this is what got to me. I kept seeing on television these accusations that Trump and Vladimir Putin or their people broke into the DNC and sold the emails to WikiLeaks. And I was sitting here in Dallas, just from time to time, I'd watch it on television. I thought, well, that didn't happen. And it kept getting worse. It kept getting more and more stories like that. So I text Ellen one day, which are public now, and I said, if in fact, if this man said to you, and I was trying to not use his name because I was told it was a very secret, thing. I just said, if in fact the man said to you what you said he said, why aren't you reporting it? And she said, I can't because it was a small family meeting and I'd have to get permission from his attorney, who is now my sister-in-law, Margaret Kinsler. And that was it. So she admitted it there. Then December 16th, I texted her and I said, have you ever told anybody? She says, I have, which she did, by the way. She told many people about this. This was not a great secret. But right after that, I got a hold of the Rich family, Joe. And when I got a hold of Joel and Mary Rich, I told them exactly what Ellen said, that the emails that Julian Assange got were from Seth Rich, from their son. They said, Ed, we know that. Oh, he said, I thought you had something new. He actually was upset because he thought I had something new. And I said, Joel, I was told that you didn't know this.
Was Seth's brother Aaron in any way mentioned by Ellen?
With Ellen, no. With the father, yes. The father said, we know what our boys did.
Boys.
Mm-hmm. Right. So Julian said Seth, and I'm trying to remember everything, like I'm not saying it's difficult to remember, but I know without question, Joel said, we know what our boys did. We want to know who murdered our son. I said, well, I have no idea who murdered your son. I just wanted you to know this information. And during that call, Mary Rich said, Ed, if you ever learn anything, and I'm thinking, how would I learn something? I'm in Dallas. I mean, I don't know anything about this. But as fate would have it, I mentioned it to a friend of mine who knew Sy Hersh. And I'm sure we're going to talk about that in a moment.
We are later, yep.
So my relationship with Ellen, and Ellen recently lied. She lied to Isikoff, and that was it. I was done because I've been through a lot of crap.
Well, let's before we go back to Ellen, I want to ask you about the parents, because Isikoff did interview them for the podcast on Tuesday, and they say that they got that call from you, and when they said we know what our son did, Isikoff's interpreting that to mean that what he did was not sell emails to WikiLeaks, that there was no evidence. Now, this is Mrs. Rich speaking, that the computers were checked by the DC police. There was no evidence found of any communication with WikiLeaks, and that also there was no evidence of any Dropbox that was used by Seth Rich to send emails to WikiLeaks. So it's pretty categorically denying what you say, Ed.
Well,
Mrs. Rich.
Look, I'm going to be very, and you can understand, I'm going to be very careful talking about Joel and Mary Rich, okay? Everyone is very sympathetic and empathetic, and that's exactly what happened with me. I became very empathetic for these people. That's how I got involved, and that's why I offered to pay a bill for them. Why Mary Rich is saying what she's saying, you'd have to ask Mary Rich, but that's not what happened. Mary Rich, what she said there is just not true.
You think that she somehow needs to cover up some truth about it? That's what you seem to be implying.
Well, the one thing I was told by Joel was that they did not want their son to be the person that got Trump, or thought of as getting Donald Trump elected. And that is why they have tried to cover up all of the stuff, and all the communications that went back and forth was, don't talk about WikiLeaks. And it's all public out there. I mean, you can see notes about Aaron, and how Aaron, when Rod Wheeler would go someplace, Aaron would call ahead and tell people, don't speak to him, don't give him any information. They also, through their contract negotiations with Rod Wheeler before they hired him, said, don't ever talk about emails or WikiLeaks. They were putting that in a contract, and there were contracts back and forth between them, and the last one didn't have it in there, which is surprising, but that's what it was all about. It was, don't talk about WikiLeaks. Joel and Mary Rich know very well what happened, and that is what I said. Okay. Seth Rich downloaded the emails, sold them to WikiLeaks.
So Isikoff also interviewed Ellen Ratner, and Ratner says, and I quote, that the name Seth Rich never came up during her meeting with Assange at the embassy, which was a couple of days, the Saturday before the November 2016 U.S. presidential election, that I'd never heard of this character, and this never happened. However, a video has emerged now of Ellen Ratner speaking on November 5, 2016. And we're going to play that right now.
I spent 3 hours with Julian Assange on Saturday at the Ecuadorian embassy in London.
Listen to this. Go ahead.
Well, I did.
Yeah.
But one of the things he did say is that the leaks were not from, they were not from the Russians. They were an internal source from the Hillary campaign or from somebody that knew Hillary, an enemy. He does not think they're from Russians. And he said Russia got credit for something WikiLeaks should have gotten credit for.
Well, how many people think that there was part of the party, the Democratic Party, that was trying to put the poison in? Because I always wondered if there were people who just secretly wanted to ruin it for her within their own party. Do you think that?
Well, as he said, she's been around a long time. She has a lot of enemies.
Ed, she doesn't mention Seth Rich's name, but she made it very clear that Assange said it was a Democratic Party insider.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's nothing I can say. She was told it was Seth Rich from Julian Assange, and I've even spoken to Ellen's sister-in-law, the attorney. She's confirmed it. Her name is Margaret Kinsler. This is no secret. This is just a bunch of adults trying to cover their asses. That's all this is. And I wish people would stop it. I wish Ellen would stop it and come clean. She told the president of Fox News, Bill Shine, the same thing. Okay, she's told many people this. Many people know that Ellen Ratner shared this information just like she did in that video. If Ellen wants to lie to Isikoff, then she can lie to Isikoff. Okay?
Oh, wait a minute. Did she mention Seth Rich's name to other people beside you? Seth Rich's name, or only that it was a Democratic Party insider? Rich's name.
She's mentioned Seth Rich's name to many people. I've been around her when she's talked about it. She even wrote an article in WMD or WND, I can't know what, talking about what a great friendship I had with her, and then she brought up all this stuff about Seth Rich.
Do you have that in an email from her, or did you record her at any time saying what she said on that video, but also including Seth Rich's name?
No, I don't have that.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you one other question before I turn over to Elizabeth for her questions. Do you think it's possible that Julian Assange was putting up a smokescreen to hide, using the Seth Rich name after he died, because he did imply very strongly in that Dutch TV interview that Rich was likely the WikiLeaks source. And now again, by telling Ratner, if he did mention Seth's name, that he may be trying to create a smokescreen to hide who the real source of the emails were.
I've never spoken to him in my life. I don't know this man, but it makes no sense. Makes no sense at all. None of this stuff makes sense. But everyone's trying to create lies and deception to cover up the truth. And the truth is very obvious. It's really obvious what took place here. You listen to the Sy Hersh audio, and he lays it out beautifully, and it's been confirmed many times. And a lot of that stuff has been confirmed. And even the existence of the file and the emails were confirmed with Malia Zimmerman, who, by the way, wrote the article at Fox News. It was put up. The article has never been proven to be incorrect. Quite frankly, it is completely correct. Everyone should go back and read that article. If they want, they can get a hold of me and I'll send them the article. Yeah. And why reporters, Joe, and this, I know you're a reporter and I know there's a lot of great reporters out there. Why the reporting world has not rallied to Malia's, to talk about her and rally for her, it's beyond I just don't understand it. She did nothing wrong. Her article was perfect, and Rod Wheeler's, a lot of people don't realize why that article got pulled, and it was some stupid move by Rod Wheeler saying that he was misquoted, and he referenced a quote that wasn't assigned to him. It was to somebody else. He said, I never said that. The answer is, you're right, you idiot, you never said it. Somebody else said it, because it said a federal investigator.
Yeah.
Leah Zimmerman is a hardworking, wonderful person who has been screwed around by everyone. And it's time that people in the world of reporting started getting behind her, because she is being messed around like no one ever has.
Elizabeth, if you want to weigh in now, I just wanted to note that Ellen Ratner told Isikoff that Assange told her that had WikiLeaks had Trump material, then they would have, in fact, put it out, which is exactly what Kristen Hafenson, the editor-in-chief of WikiLeaks, told us on our show last week. Elizabeth.
Thanks, and thank you, Ed, for joining us. I just had a relatively specific question that I wanted to ask you, and that was, in your conversations with Ellen and in the conversations that she had with other people that you were present for, did Ellen ever specify the method of file transfer that Seth Rich allegedly used to pass these emails and these documents to WikiLeaks? Because the word Dropbox has been used a lot to describe that transfer, but obviously there are a number of different file sharing methods that can be used. And I was just curious if that had ever been specified.
No, Ellen has a hard time understanding how to work a cell phone. So I mean, she's a very nice person, but she would have no idea. If you were to say Dropbox, she wouldn't even know what that is.
Okay, great to know. Thank you.
Well, Elizabeth, you can join in with me now as we begin. We move the conversation to Sy Hersh. Now, it's a fascinating conversation you had, Ed. With him, we only had 6 minutes of that for about a year and a half or more now, but now the full 20 minutes have been released. And it seems to me both of you are trying to get information from each other, which is completely understandable here. Hersh says he has information from a trusted source inside the FBI, and he says that that person read an FBI report on Rich.
This is according to the FBI report. He makes contact with WikiLeaks. That's in his computer, and he makes contact. Now, he had submitted a series of documents, of emails, some juicy emails from the DNC. And, you know, by the way, all this shit about the DNC, whether hacked or wasn't hacked, but whatever happened, the Democrats themselves wrote this shit. You know what I mean?
Well, they wrote it, but also the Republicans, and they hired that group. But when you say he submitted...
but you know who started that group with the Simpson stuff? Rubio.
Yeah, exactly. But when you say...
How do you know that?
Well, because, people have told me, but it was Rubio, McCain, and Bush that found this former MI6 guy.
Oh, you know, we have to talk more about that, because I'll tell you, I know Simpson knew him for years. That's Steele. But, you know...
Simpson? Who's Simpson?
But let me keep on going.
All right.
Let me go back to my narrative.
Right.
Then you can ask questions.
Okay.
All I know is that he offered a sample, an extensive sample, you know, I'm sure dozens of emails, and said, I want money.
Okay.
That later, WikiLeaks did get the password. He had a Dropbox, a protected Dropbox, which isn't hard to do. I mean, you don't have to be a wizard, IT wizard. You know, he was certainly, you know, he's not a dumb kid. They got access to the Dropbox. He also, and this is also in the FDA report, he also let people know with whom he was dealing. And I don't know how he dealt. I'll tell you about WikiLeaks in a second. I don't know how he dealt with the WikiLeaks and the mechanism, but he also, the word was passed according to the FBI report. I also shared this box with a couple of friends. So if anything happens to me, it's not going to solve your problem. Okay? I don't know what that means. I don't know whether he was, anyway. But WikiLeaks got access, and before he was killed, Roger Stone was talking about this file publicly about 5 days before the kid was killed. So I don't think the killing had anything to do with anything. Although one of the lawyers the family now has been mouthing off about the Russians killed him.
That contradicts what Isikoff reported, who says that the FBI never got involved in the Seth Rich case, that only the local police and the Attorney General for the District of Columbia got involved, but never the FBI. Now, later in the broadcast, Hersh says what he knows, it doesn't make it true, that what he's told you and what he's heard doesn't make it true. Now, Isikoff made a big deal out of that, saying that Hersh was no longer prepared to stand by the story that he had earlier told you. However, do you think that Hersh absolutely got this from his source, but that because he did not have, Hersh, that is, have access to the report itself, he needed more corroboration, and therefore he was speaking to you, hoping that you might be able to corroborate at least part of this story?
No,
Nope?
not at all. Hersh wasn't looking for anything from me. So let me go back and explain how I came in contact with Hersh, and then let's address the points that you were making. So the first and foremost, I just was speaking to a friend of mine who was trying to I'm going to call them widgets, trying to find somebody who he might be able to sell some widgets to. And he was asking me about my Rolodex and if I knew certain people. And at the end of the phone call, I said to him, hey, by the way, I spoke to this family. It really touched me. And I wanted to know, do you know anybody who might know anything about this murder of this young man, Seth Rich? And he said, Matter of fact, I do. Sy Hersh, it's the darndest thing, and I remember his words exactly, darndest thing. He's been trying to get an article published, and no one will publish it. No one will touch the article. And Sy knows as much as anybody on this. I went, oh, okay. He said, would you like to talk to him? I said, sure. I didn't really know who this man was. I had heard his name from time to time, but I didn't know the man at all. So a couple days later, I get a phone call from Sy Hersh. And he just starts saying, hey, look, Larry told me to call you. I hear you're a great guy, blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you what I know. He wasn't calling me to ask me any questions. He was calling to tell me what he knew, because I knew very little about this. As he was talking, Sy Hersh talks really fast. And my handwriting, I can show it to you, it's horrible. So my kids had just taught me a couple days before voice memo on the Apple machines. So I hit voice memo, and he just started talking. And what's really interesting is since this, Sy Hersh has said, well, Butowsky said this about me and said this, and Butowsky said this about me. I've never said a word about Sy Hersh, all right? I've only played his recording. Now, the reason the first one was out, Joe and Elizabeth, the 6 minutes was he said a lot of things that were embarrassing. And I had no interest in ever sharing this with anyone except the Rich family. So when I first got the recording, I sent it directly over to Joel and Mary Rich. I said, maybe this will be helpful. And I never heard back from them. And it really bothered me that I thought, almost like in football, I felt like I threw the Hail Mary and got some information, or I got up and hit a grand slam. Elizabeth, I know you're not from this country, so that's like being the hero at the end, okay? And I thought, like, wow, I came across something. And they never said thank you. So when I called them, I said, hey, you gonna say thank you? Because that's all I was thinking about was, why would you not say thank you? I just gave you a ton of information. And their answer was really weird. It was, oh yeah, no big deal. Thanks, yeah, whatever. And I thought, that's bizarre. Nobody would ever react that way. There was something really strange when they said, yeah, that's fine. And I thought that was weird. So I held on to that thing for the longest time. And I then sent emails to Sy Hersh, which I have, and I'll be happy to share them with you. And just ask me, and I'll send them to you, saying, why won't you share this with Joel and Mary Rich? Why won't you come clean and tell them who you know? Because you've got a parent whose son was murdered. They should know what the hell happened to their kid. And you know something. Why would you not come clean with that? And he ignored me. I sent him another one. He ignored me. And he just continued to ignore me all the time. So I redacted my name out of this whole thing. I was trying to keep my name out of it, but I wanted people to know, what literally he said. And I only released that after the article on May 15th came out from Malia Zimmerman. Recently, and after Isikoff, what a jackass this guy is. Am I allowed to say that on this?
You just said it.
This guy, you should take all his pens away, his keyboards. This guy is not a reporter. This guy knew and knows all this information, but he still wrote all of this Conspiracyland nonsense, knowing that almost everything he wrote was not true.
Well, Ed, let me stop you there for a minute, because I heard somewhere that you had given the name of Ellen Ratner to him, but I understood that you asked him not to use that name in any way, and in fact, he then contacted her, and it was based on that you decided to release your lawsuit in which you name her. Is that correct,
Yeah.
what I've just said?
That's exactly. So what I did is he was constantly challenging me in our conversations.
Okay.
And I said, this is exhausting, Michael. He says, well, you got to tell me who told you. And I said, listen, can we do that reporter thing where you go off the record on background, whatever that is? He said, sure. I said, okay, so off the record, you'll never talk about it. You'll never contact this person, but I'm pretty sure you probably know this person. So he said, yes. I said, okay, her name is Ellen Ratner. He goes, I know Ellen Ratner. I go, I figured you might, but we had an agreement. And he said, yeah. So then a week before the Conspiracyland podcast came out, he called me and he said, Ed, I spoke to Ellen Ratner. She says you're lying. That killed me, because why just speak to Ellen Ratner? Because I told you the name and you told me you weren't going to contact her. And I only did that because I was trying to protect Ellen. I've kept Ellen's name out of this thing for 2 years. But then she lied to Isikoff. I'm like, my God, Ellen, how the hell are you going to lie to him? I mean, I sat here and protected your name for 2 years. And at that point, I said, you know what? I'm done with it. The hell with it. Here, everyone, take whatever you want.
Now, Sy, at the time that first video or audio of him came out, I emailed him, and he did confirm that was him. And he was very angry that people in Texas, as he said, meaning you, had tape recorded him without his knowledge.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't say any more than that. But I learned from a source close to him that Sy was still working on the story. Not that he had written it and couldn't get it published, but that he was still working on it. And that once that audio of yours came out, his sources dried up. They were burned. They wouldn't talk to him anymore, because what he was doing was talking, he thought, privately to you about what he knew, hoping, I think, that you would give him some stuff, because he does say at one point, tell me what you know. I mean, that's pretty clear. He wanted you to tell him what you knew. So he was working as a reporter there, trying to give some information to you about what he had learned. And then hopefully you could corroborate that or in some way confirm that or give him a new lead. But instead, when the audio came out, from what I heard, not from Sy, but from someone who's very close to Sy, that he was unable to continue working on the Seth Rich story because, particularly, I guess, that FBI source and others would no longer talk to him, because now it's out in public what was unfinished reporting. And that's why when he writes in that email to you, why are you telling people things about me? And he seems to be retracting it. It seems to me that he's trying to say, look, forget what I told you, because I don't want this out, because this is going to ruin my sources. Not so much that what I told you wasn't true anymore. And when he says it may be true or may not be true, it doesn't make it true. It means that he's still gathering information. Like I said at the top of this segment, when you have something orally from a source, you need then to corroborate that. He didn't have that. When you have a document, you don't need to know who the source is. But in this case, he didn't have the FBI report. He doesn't have the document. He only heard it from someone inside the FBI. So he was still working on the story, and that your release hurt him. Have you ever heard that before?
No, and I think it's a bunch of garbage.
You do?
Absolutely. I think Sy Hersh is a great storyteller. He had a lot of time to make that up. Sy Hersh, the only reason he said, oh, what do you know? He wasn't calling me. You listen to that. It was 26 minutes, because I started after the phone call began. I started recording after I figured out I couldn't keep up with them. And that's just a bunch of crap. I mean, Sy Hersh didn't call because he wanted to find out what I knew. He called to tell me what he knew. I only mentioned one thing, that I had a friend who met with Julian. That was it. That's the only thing I said in that whole thing. He goes, oh, tell me what you know. That was all. Now, I had other phone calls with Sy. Okay? Sy told me he couldn't get things published. Okay? He said he tried to get it published. So to say that it dried up, he might have wanted to do a lot more. But remember this, that when he did that phone call, nobody knew about that recording until May 20th. That recording occurred in the middle of November 2016. All right, so Sy Hersh is a great storyteller, and he told people, says, well, Butowsky says 1 + 1 = 3. I never said a word about Mr. Hersh, ever. Mm-hmm. This is the first time I've actually been somewhat vocal, because I'm sick and tired of lies. Sy Hersh should come out. He has a source at the FBI. You have a murder. Sy Hersh should say what he knows. He should tell the Rich family. He should tell the Washington police, although they might not do anything about it, but he should come public with it. He's an 81-year-old man who was holding out information, keeping people from finding out what happened to a murdered young man.
Yeah, I can't imagine why Sy would make that up, except maybe to just put it out there and see how you reacted to it. But
no, but it's also been confirmed, and you say that the FBI never took it. Let me tell you what the FBI says.
No, I didn't say that. Isikoff reported that.
Isikoff reported. The FBI has a shared place called the CART division with the Washington police. The Washington police kept it. They had possession. They never signed it over to the FBI. But the FBI used that shared facility on 300 Indiana Street or 300 Cleveland Street. But wherever the CART division is, that's where the computer went to. Something else that you said that I wanted to get back to.
How do you know that, Ed, that the FBI got it for sure? Besides what Sy said.
Oh, well, the other thing I want to say is the NSA has 32 pages of communication between Seth Rich and WikiLeaks. Don't think that there's some mystery here. This really occurred.
Well, how do you know this?
Well,
I'm not saying it's not true. I just want to know.
We had a FOIA, and they came back, and Ty Clevenger
Oh, right.
wrote it up. And you can go to a website called debunkingrodwheelersclaims.net, and you'll see the communication right there.
From the NSA, too, back to your lawyer, Clevenger.
Back to the lawyer. And then, I will tell you, there's a lot more about to happen, a lot more. And everyone is going to see that every word I'm saying is completely accurate. So why Mr. Hersh decided to lie? Ask him. Ellen Ratner, to cover her butt. She's a nice lady. We used to be good friends. We're not anymore. And Isikoff, I've already explained my feelings.
So, Ed, honestly now, obviously you were motivated to help the family. I think that's sincere. But also, you're a Republican, or you are now. I mean, you were tired of, you said in other interviews that the Russia story was hurting Trump. Were you also motivated to help get this story off Trump's back? And did you have any contacts at the White House beside your meeting with Sean Spicer?
But Joe, I have to, I hope you appreciate. I got to correct what you said.
Okay.
I didn't have this great motivation to help Trump. I could not believe I'm living in a world where these lies are being spewed. I mean, every time you turned around, Trump was an illegitimate president. You heard this over and over again, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm in a position of knowing the truth. Okay, but I didn't go out and do much of that. Am I a Republican? Yes, I am. Am I a conservative? Yes, I am. Am I one of those idiotic Republicans? No. Okay, I mean, I'm not one of those crazed Republicans. What I value is the truth, and that's what I thought I was doing, is helping people, Joel and Mary Rich, get to the truth and get the truth out. That's what I cared about, and that's the only thing I care about. I mean, in Isikoff said in his podcast that I had an interest in finding out or something about the murderer. I've never once said I had an interest in finding out who murdered Seth Rich. Never.
You once expressed regret that you actually offered to pay for the private detective for the Rich family. Is that right?
Yeah, I would do it exactly the same. But let me explain to you how that worked. I mean, I'm talking with them, and I said, listen, they kept saying, we don't have any leads. No one from the Washington police, Joey Dellacamera and Chief of Police Newsom, have never done anything to help them find out who was murdered or what is going on with the murder, I should say. And I said to them, well, why don't you hire a private detective? And when they said they couldn't afford one, I'm not a rich guy. And I just simply said, I'll pay for it. Never thinking, Joe and Elizabeth, at that moment, they would say, thank you. Like, that's one of those things where you expect them to say, oh, we barely know you. No, thank you. They said, thank you. Well, at that point, I'm not going to turn to them and say, oh, I was just kidding. Okay. Like I would have hired, I cared. And we have many communications, Joel and Mary Rich. I mean, they even for Passover sent me a big cheesecake, a thank you. They asked me to call Berkman, this guy Jack Berkman, and ask him to leave them alone. And I did that. I was just helping a family who lost a son in any way that I could. And then all of a sudden, on May the 15th, Rod Wheeler spoke to Joel Rich. And Joel said, gosh, I'm really happy you're coming out with the article. And Rod has this in his notes. Really happy you're coming out with this article. There's a lady at some website that Michelle something can you, Joel Rich said to Rod, can you add her to the story? I'm really excited about this coming out. Then 2 days later, a 180. Joel Rich says, oh my goodness, I can't believe you did this. 2 nights before, he was excited as could be that this article was coming out. Rod Wheeler read the article to him. He was excited. 2 days later, whole different Joel Rich.
Did the Riches ever talk to you about the lawyer from the PR person from the DNC that moved into their Brad Bauman, right?
Yeah. They asked me, Mr. Rich said to me, Ed, who is Brad Bauman? I said, I have no idea. He said, he showed up one day and said he was assigned to us, and I have no idea who he is. And he said these words, why do I need someone assigned to me? I said, Mr. Rich, I have no idea. Those were his exact words to me.
And what role do you think he played in coaching them what to say, for example?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the times there were emails back and forth that I were supposedly from Aaron or from Joel that I knew they didn't send. I mean, I know one email because Mr. Rich was not very computer literate and he had pasted in things and it just couldn't be him. I'm not trying to pick on older people in computers like Ellen and Joel, but this guy, Brad Bauman, showed up and literally took over communications for them. I'll give you an interesting thing, and this I've never told anybody. At least I might have told one person this. There's a guy named David Weigel at the Washington Post, and I called him up and I said, why aren't you guys writing about this? I'm going to tell you everything. And after I told him this whole thing, he said, we need to run that by Brad. Now, this is a guy at the Washington Post. I said, excuse me? He goes, we need to run everything by Brad before we print it on this story. The Washington Post needed to run it by a DNC public relation person before they could print it.
And what happened?
Nothing ever got printed. Do you know what it's like to be me? Nobody prints anything that proves what happened. No one supports anything. Fox News, isn't writing anything and talking about this at all. And I'm out there just, doing things like this.
So Ed, you're obviously, a lot of people believe you, a lot of people don't believe you. You've got this lawsuit now. What are you hoping this lawsuit might do in terms of discovery? Do you expect some kind of real tangible proof to back up what you're saying?
Okay, so anybody who doesn't believe me, write to me and tell me what they don't believe. I'll prove it to them. That's one thing, because I can't stand it when people are calling me liars. And a lot of these people have motivations to keep this Trump-Vladimir Putin bromance going, okay? I have no interest. I could care less. I just care about the truth. Which lawsuit are you talking about? Because I have about 17 lawsuits where
okay. Let's say the last one where you name Ellen Ratner. Let's start.
Okay.
Talk about that one.
I am suing people because they deserve to be sued, because they lied about me, and they need to be held accountable. If we don't sue these people and we don't bring them to court, they're going to keep doing the same crap. And they're going to make up stories about me and people like me, and they're going to get away with it because no one's going to hold them accountable. So if the press isn't going to hold people accountable, the legal system's going to. And I'm going to sue these people, and anyone continues to smear me, like some people maybe recently have, they're going to be sued.
Well, what are you hoping to gain from that? Just maybe, I don't know about monetary settlement, but are you hoping material evidence comes out that proves what you're saying?
Well, all the evidence is coming out. Okay? I mean, it's all coming out, and it's being worked on right now. And you'll see real soon, my lawyer, Ty Clevenger, is brilliant. And we know he knows exactly what he's doing and knows exactly how to get things. Plus, there's a lot of stuff that's going to start coming out from the White House. Am I going to get money? I sure hope so. I mean, I've spent in about $800,000 for this crap from this made-up story about me.
Are you going to try to depose Ellen Ratner, get her under oath to answer these questions from your lawyer?
No, I wouldn't do that to Ellen. I wouldn't do that because Ellen is not the villain here. Ellen just didn't want to be involved and she lied. I mean, Ellen's a good person.
Let me ask a question about that. What do you think accounts for, and I am asking you to speculate here, but why did you think people like the Riches and Ellen would have changed their tune so distinctly, even when there is, maybe some evidence, especially in Ellen's case, that she had a different view previously?
Sure. Ellen didn't know this stuff was out there. And I think it's really interesting. Can I just share with you how that one video clip came about?
Yeah, absolutely. We've shown the video, so please discuss it. Yeah.
So it's the strangest thing. I got tagged in a tweet, and it said, fast forward to an hour and 2 minutes. And I did. And there was what you now see. So the man, we connected, and I thanked him, for sending that to me. He said, let me tell you what happened here. He's 71 years old. He lives in Turkey. And he said he couldn't sleep because he couldn't get Ellen Ratner off his mind. Because ever since something came out in the lawsuit, he couldn't get Ellen Ratner off his mind, so he went on YouTube and wanted to know more about her, and then looked at clips that were near the election, and he watched the whole hour, and then at that hour and 2 minute mark is when Ellen Ratner said what she said, and then he sent that to me. And he said his wife was getting mad at him, saying, stop talking about Ellen Ratner. and this is in Turkey. And he sent it to me. Otherwise, we would never have it. So Ellen Ratner, look, Ellen is a very kind person. I'm on the board of one of her companies, although I'm probably kicked off it now, one of her nonprofits. Ellen is a good person, but she lied, and she threw me under the bus, and I'm not going to stand for it.
Okay, Ed. Well, we thank you for coming on, giving us your side of this story.
What to say?
It never ends, this story, in terms of other people who could respond to what you've said. But we've got you on the record now, and we appreciate that.
Absolutely.
So we were joined from Dallas, Texas, by money manager Ed Butowsky with another installment about the Seth Rich controversy. And I thank you, Ed, for joining us on CN Live.
Absolutely. Thank you.